Every dawn on a cracked city sidewalk, single dad Carter flips pancakes on his tiny street stand while his daughter sleeps in the van behind him. Before the rush, he quietly plates one extra meal for Finn. The skinny homeless boy who appears from under the bridge, grabs his food with wide, grateful eyes and vanishes again. Carter never asks questions, never takes $1, just smiles and says, "See you tomorrow, buddy." But one ordinary afternoon, as Carter hands Finn another free plate, 4 black SUVs screech to the curb, and men in suits step out, calling the boy "Sir." The morning air carried that bone-deep cold that comes before sunrise, the kind that seeps through worn flannel and settles into tired muscles. Carter William Ellis stood behind his makeshift pancake stand, a steel cart welded to his aging van, watching steam rise from the griddle into the pre-dawn darkness. His breath formed small clouds. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, flipping golden circles while yellow streetlights cast long shadows across cracked pavement. Somewhere distant, a truck engine rumbled to life. Inside the van, barely visible through fogged glass, 8-year-old Audrey lay curled beneath a faded quilt, blonde hair across a makeshift pillow, stuffed bear tucked under her chin. Carter glanced back through the serving window, his weathered face softening for just a moment before returning to the sizzling batter. The smell of butter and fresh coffee drifted down the empty street, mixing with damp concrete from last night's rain. Carter had chosen this spot carefully, a worn corner between an industrial district and the highway overpass where early shift workers stopped for breakfast before heading to warehouses and loading docks. It was not glamorous, but it was steady. He reached for the spatula. The motion was automatic, now muscle memory from years working restaurant lines with proper kitchens and paychecks that arrived regularly. That life felt impossibly distant, separated from this one by a phone call from the hospital, a rainy road and guilt that never quite lifted. As the sun began its slow crawl above the horizon, painting clouds orange and pink, Carter plated the first order. But before any customer arrived, he prepared one more serving, this one deliberate and careful. Pancakes stacked just so, scrambled eggs, 3 strips of bacon arranged like they mattered, syrup sealed tight. He wrapped it in clean paper, folded the edges with the same care he used for paying customers, and set it on the cart's corner. Then he waited. The boy appeared from shadows beneath the overpass like a ghost materializing from concrete and steel. Finn was 10 years old, though hunger had made him smaller, sharper at the edges. His hoodie hung 2 big sleeves past his fingertips, jeans bearing stains that spoke of sleeping in places not meant for sleeping. But his eyes held an intelligence that belied the circumstances. He stopped several feet away, as he always did, and waited for Carter to notice him. Their unspoken ritual, this dance of dignity and kindness, where neither acknowledged the charity for what it was. "You're late," Carter said, not looking up from wiping the counter. "Pancakes almost got cold." "Sorry, sir." The boy's voice was quiet, cultured in a way that did not match his appearance. "The trucks were loud last night. I couldn't sleep until they stopped." Carter nodded and pushed the wrapped meal across the metal surface. "Made an extra batch. Hate to see food go to waste." The lie they both accepted. The boy took the package with careful hands, mumbling thanks. Carter turned back to his work, but watched from the corner of his eye as Finn opened the paper, saw the child's shoulders relax at the warmth still radiating from the food, the way he ate slowly, deliberately, making it last. "Mr. Carter," Audrey's voice came from the van, face pressed against the window screen, hair sticking up at odd angles. "Can I have breakfast too?" "Course, little peanut. Give me 2 minutes." Finn looked up at the girl's voice, then quickly back down. There was something in that glance, longing mixed with shame, that Carter recognized but chose not to name. The boy finished eating faster after that, folded the paper carefully, placed it in the trash bin. "Thank you, sir," Finn said again, already backing toward the shadows. "See you tomorrow, buddy." The boy nodded once and disappeared under the overpass, swallowed by dim morning light and traffic rumble. This routine repeated day after day. Carter arrived before dawn, fired up the griddle, made the extra plate. Finn appeared, ate, vanished. Weeks blurred together in a rhythm of survival and small kindnesses. But for Carter, mornings started much earlier in dark hours when sleep refused to come and memories pressed close. He would lie on the thin mattress, Audrey breathing softly beside him, and remember another kitchen, another life. His wife, Larissa, laughing as she danced around the prep station flower on her cheek and that bright smile that could light up the darkest shift. She had been the reason he loved restaurant work, the reason he pushed through brutal hours and endless pressure. And she had died because he chose an extra shift over driving her home. The thought circled his mind like a vulture. If he had just said no, if he had just put her first instead of the money, instead of proving himself. The accident had been quick, they told him. A truck running a red light on a rain-slicked road. She never knew what hit her, but Carter knew, every single day. That guilt had driven him to sell nearly everything to buy this van and cart, to choose a life where he could be with Audrey every moment, where he would never again pick work over family. The van was cramped and leaked when it rained hard. Some nights Audrey cried quietly because she missed having a real bed, a real home, but they were together. That had to be enough. "Dad," Audrey's voice cut through the morning routine one day about 3 weeks into Finn's appearances. "Why does that boy get more bacon than me?" Carter paused, spatula hovering over the griddle. He looked at his daughter, saw hurt confusion in her green eyes, felt his heart crack a little. "Come here, sweetheart." He crouched down to eye level. "You see that boy? He doesn't have a bed like you do. Doesn't have a dad to make him breakfast every morning. All he has is whatever kindness people are willing to give. You have me. You have this van, and it might not be perfect, but it's ours. He has a cold bridge and nothing else." Audrey's lower lip trembled. "But I'm hungry too sometimes. I know, baby. I promise you'll never go to bed with an empty stomach as long as I'm breathing. But we can share what we have, can't we? We can make sure that boy doesn't go hungry either." She thought about this small face, serious, then nodded. "Okay, Dad." After that day, something shifted. Audrey started waving at Finn when he appeared, a small gesture the boy initially ignored, but eventually tentatively returned. One morning she brought him a cookie she had been saving, holding it out with both hands. "I don't have to eat it all," she said seriously. "But I want to share." Finn stared at the cookie, then at the girl, then carefully accepted it. "Thank you," he whispered, and for the first time Carter saw him smile, really smile, before he caught himself and the careful mask returned. The two children began occupying the same space more comfortably. Audrey would do homework at the plastic chairs by the cart, and Finn would linger longer, helping wipe tables, carrying dishes to the bin. He never asked for payment. Carter never offered. But understanding grew between them, tentative trust. One afternoon, Audrey struggled with a math problem, fractions that made no sense. Finn, hovering nearby, finally spoke. "It's like dividing a pancake," he said quietly. "If you cut it into 4 pieces, each piece is 1/4. If you eat 2 pieces, that's 2/4, which is the same as 1/2. Audrey's face lit up. "Oh, that makes sense." She looked at Finn with new respect. "You're really smart. Did you go to school?" The boy's face shuddered, immediately walls going up behind his eyes. "A long time ago. I don't remember much." But he did remember. Carter could see it in the way Finn's fingers twitched, like he wanted to reach for a pencil, in the way his eyes tracked words in Audrey's textbook with hungry familiarity. This child had not always been homeless. Something had happened, something Finn would not or could not talk about. Carter noticed other things too. The way Finn, startled at loud noises, tensed whenever anyone in business attire walked past, constantly scanned his surroundings like a small animal expecting predators. And there was that chain around his neck, always hidden beneath his hoodie, but occasionally visible when he bent forward. A metal tag of some kind, though Finn never let anyone see it clearly. One morning, Finn stumbled while reaching for his plate and the chain swung free for just a moment. Carter caught a glimpse of letters engraved on the metal, FHR, and below that a small logo he recognized from billboards downtown, Rhodes Tech. "Nice bracelet," Carter said casually, not wanting to spook the boy. "Where'd you get it?" Finn's hand flew to his chest, tucking the chain back inside his hoodie, eyes wide with something close to panic. "It's mine. It's all I have left." Carter held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Hey, I wasn't going to take it. I just thought it looked cool." The boy relaxed slightly, but kept his hand over his chest, protecting the hidden metal. After that, he was more careful, making sure the chain never showed. The watching had not been one-sided. For weeks, Amanda Constance Reed, a social worker with the city's Child Services Department, had been following reports of a minor living unsheltered near the industrial district. She had spotted Finn several times, always from a distance, always disappearing before she could approach, but she knew where he ate breakfast now. Amanda pulled her sedan to the curb near Carter's stand on a Tuesday morning, her practiced eye taking in the scene. The father, the daughter, the breakfast cart that probably was not up to health code but was clearly providing a service. And there, sitting at one of the plastic chairs, was the boy she had been tracking. She approached, slowly, keeping her body language open. Years of experience had taught her that trust was built in increments, especially with children who had learned to fear adults. "Good morning," she said to Carter, offering a professional smile. "I'm Amanda Reed with Child Protective Services. Do you have a moment to talk?" Carter's face went carefully neutral. "I've got all my permits, ma'am. Everything's legal." "I'm not here about your business." Amanda's eyes flicked to where Finn had frozen halfway to standing, clearly preparing to run. "I'm here about him," the boy bolted. One moment there, the next sprinting toward the overpass, hoodie flapping behind him. Amanda's colleague moved to follow, but Carter stepped into his path. "Don't. You'll just scare him more. He's not hurting anyone. He's just trying to survive." Amanda held up a hand, stopping her colleague. She studied Carter's face, reading genuine concern, their protective instinct that extended beyond his own daughter. "Mr. Ellis, I understand you've been helping him. That's admirable. But a child cannot live on the street. It's not safe, and it's not legal. We need to get him into the system." "The system." Carter's voice was flat. "Ma'am, with respect, that boy is terrified of adults, especially ones in nice clothes. Whatever happened to him before he ended up under that bridge, it wasn't good. You really think more strangers and institutions are going to help him?" Amanda's expression softened. "I think we have resources you don't. And every child deserves a chance at a real life. Don't you want that for him?" "Of course. But I also want him to feel safe, and right now the only place he feels safe is here." They stood in silence, morning traffic humming around them. Finally, Amanda handed Carter a business card. "If you see him again, please call me, or talk to him. Help him understand we're trying to help, not hurt. Can you do that?" Carter pocketed the card without looking at it. "I'll do what I think is right for that kid." Amanda nodded slowly, then turned her attention to the detail that had been nagging at her since she first got a clear look at the boy. That chain around his neck, the brief glimpse of metal with letters. FHR. Rhodes Tech. She had seen those logos before in news reports about a missing child, a CEO's son who had vanished months ago. She did not say anything to Carter, not yet, but she made a mental note to check the case files when she got back to the office. That evening, Carter stopped at a convenience store for propane. While waiting in line, the television behind the counter caught his attention. 6 months after his disappearance, the search for Finn Henry Rhodes continues. The news anchor's voice was professionally sympathetic. "The 10-year-old son of technology CEO Alexandra Rhodes vanished from his home last spring, and despite an extensive investigation, no credible leads have emerged. Anyone with information is urged to contact the Rhodes family hotline." The screen showed a photograph of a young boy younger than the Finn Carter knew, but unmistakably similar. Same dark hair, same careful eyes, same hint of a scar near his left ear. The boy in the photo wore expensive clothes and stood before a mansion, but there was something in his expression, a guardedness that matched the child who ate free pancakes under an overpass. Carter paid for the propane without speaking and walked back to the van in a daze. It could not be the same kid. But the more he thought about it, the more pieces clicked into place. The way Finn spoke vocabulary and manners of a child raised with education and privilege. The fear of people in suits of authority figures. The chain with the Rhodes Tech logo. That night after Audrey fell asleep, Carter sat in the driver's seat and stared at Amanda Reed's business card. He should call her. He should tell her what he suspected. But he thought about Finn's face, the terror in the boy's eyes at the sight of Amanda's sedan, and he hesitated. What if the wrong person found out? What if whoever had taken Finn was still looking for him? Carter put the card away. He would wait. He would watch. And he would keep feeding the kid until he figured out what the right thing to do actually was. The decision was taken out of his hands 3 days later. It was a Thursday afternoon, and business had been good enough that Carter had stayed open an extra hour, hoping to make enough for the van's overdue brake repair. Audrey sat in her usual spot, drawing pictures, and Finn, who had grown comfortable enough to linger until sunset, was helping scrub the griddle. The sound of engines, multiple engines moving in formation, broke through normal street noise. Carter looked up to see 4 black SUVs turning onto their street, moving with deliberate coordination. Spotless, expensive, with tinted windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. The vehicles pulled to a stop along the curb. Doors opened in synchronized precision. Men in dark suits stepped out, earpieces, visible postures, speaking of security training and serious purpose. One of them, tall, with close-cropped hair and sharp eyes, held a folder as he surveyed the scene. Audrey grabbed her notebook and moved closer to her father. The scattered customers found reasons to leave quickly, and Finn went rigid, every muscle in his small body tensing like a rabbit that has spotted the hawk. The man with the folder approached the cart, his eyes moving from Carter to Audrey to Finn, lingering on the boy with intensity that made Carter's protective instincts flare. Finn Henry Rhodes. The man's voice was professional controlled, but there was an undercurrent of something else. Relief, maybe. Triumph. The package of half-eaten food trembled in Finn's hands. His face had gone pale. Breathing quickened small gasps of panic. Carter moved without thinking, stepping between the men and the terrified child. "Whoa, hold on. What's going on here? Who are you people?" The man, Dante Flynn, according to the ID badge he flashed, kept his voice level. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside. We're here for the boy." "Like hell you are." Carter's voice hardened. "That kid is eating lunch. He's not hurting anyone. You want to talk to him? You tell me what this is about first." Dante's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, the rear door of the 4th SUV opened. A woman emerged, and the afternoon light seemed to catch her like a spotlight. She was somewhere in her late 30s, impeccably dressed in a dark coat and heels. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect twist, and her face was the kind of beautiful that belonged on magazine covers and boardroom portraits. But it was her eyes that told the real story. Red-rimmed, exhausted, carrying the weight of months without sleep, without hope, without knowing. Alexandra Bridget Rhodes, CEO and mother, walked toward the pancake cart like a woman approaching either salvation or final heartbreak. She stopped several feet away, her gaze locked on Finn, taking in every detail. The tattered clothes, the dirt under his fingernails, the chain around his neck bearing her company's logo, the small scar near his ear from when he fell off his bicycle at age 6. Her hand came up to her mouth, trembling, and tears began to slide down her carefully made-up face. "Finn?" Her voice broke on the single syllable. "Sweetheart, it's Mom." The boy made a sound something between a gasp and a sob, and suddenly he was moving not toward her but away, dropping his food and running blindly toward the overpass. Security moved to intercept, but Carter was faster propelled by months of instinct and care. He caught up to Finn in the shadows under the concrete pillars where the boy had collapsed against the wall, hyperventilating, lost in trauma. "Finn, hey, look at me." Carter knelt down, not touching, just being present. "You don't have to run from me. You know me right, I'm not going to let anyone hurt you." "They'll take me back," Finn gasped out. "They'll take me back there and he'll find me again and... Who are you afraid of?" But Finn was beyond answering, lost in panic and memory. Alexandra had followed Dante, a protective shadow at her back. She approached slowly, hands out in a gesture of peace. "Baby," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I never stopped looking. Not for one day. Please look at me." Finn's breathing hitched. Slowly, he raised his head. In the dim light under the bridge, mother and son locked eyes for the first time in 6 months. "Do you remember," Alexandra said, voice thick with tears, "when you were little, I used to sing you to sleep, that song about the stars and the sea. You always made me sing it twice, because once was never enough." Finn's lips moved, forming words he did not speak, but Carter saw recognition flash across the boy's face, something primal and deep awakening. "And you used to call me your little pancake," Alexandra continued, dropping to her knees on the dirty concrete. "Because I made them every Sunday morning and you said you loved them so much you wanted to be one." She laughed through her tears. "Do you remember, sweetheart? Do you remember me?" Something broke in Finn's carefully constructed walls. He made a small noise like a wounded animal, and then he was crawling toward her, and Alexandra was gathering him into her arms, both of them sobbing, clinging to each other like drowning people who had finally found shore. Carter stood and backed away, giving them space. But as he turned to leave, Finn's hand shot out, grabbing Carter's wrist with surprising strength. "Don't go," the boy said. "Please don't go." Carter looked at Alexandra, saw the complex mix of gratitude and grief in her eyes, and nodded. "I'm right here, buddy. I'm not going anywhere." The reunion moved from the overpass to a secure building downtown. DNA tests were administered, statements were taken, and child welfare specialists were called in to assess Finn's physical and mental state. Carter and Audrey were brought along partly as witnesses, and partly because Finn refused to be separated from them. Over the next several hours, the story emerged in fragments. Finn had been taken 6 months ago by people working for his father, Clinton Rhodes, Alexandra's ex-husband. The divorce had been vicious, with custody of Finn becoming the primary battlefield. Clinton, desperate for leverage and convinced that Alexandra's devotion to her company made her an unfit mother, had orchestrated his own son's disappearance. But something had gone wrong. The people Clinton hired had been careless. During a transfer, Finn had escaped slipping away and running into the city. He had survived by stealing food from dumpsters, sleeping in parks, eventually finding shelter under the overpass. The trauma had been so severe that he blocked out much of his previous life, remembering only fragments, fear, and the desperate need to stay hidden. Carter listened to all this in a daze, trying to reconcile the cheerful boy who helped clean his griddle with this story of betrayal and abuse. "Mr. Ellis." Amanda Reed approached, her expression softer than before. "You were right to be cautious to protect him. If you had called when I first asked if Finn had gone into the system before we knew about his father's involvement, Clinton would have had people looking for him there. You may have saved this boy's life just by giving him pancakes and asking no questions." Carter did not feel like a hero. He felt tired and overwhelmed and worried about what came next. That night, Carter and Audrey drove back to their van in silence. The city lights blurred past the windows. Somewhere in a tower of glass and steel, Finn was sleeping in a bed that cost more than Carter made in a month. But Carter could not shake the image of the boy's face as they said goodbye, the fear in his eyes, the whispered, "Please come back tomorrow." The next morning, Carter set up his cart as usual. The coffee brewed, the batter mixed, the griddle heated. But the extra plate he prepared felt wrong somehow, like a ritual whose meaning had been lost. Except Finn did come. Not walking up from under the bridge, but stepping out of a black SUV, Dante at his side. The boy was wearing new clothes, his hair washed and trimmed, but his eyes sought out Carter with the same desperate need as before. "He insisted," Dante said almost apologetically. "Ms. Rhodes thought it might help if he could maintain some connection to the place where he felt safe." Finn ran to the cart, and Carter found himself pulled into a fierce hug. "I thought I'd never see you again," Finn whispered. "Hey, I told you, buddy. I'm not going anywhere." Carter ruffled the boy's clean hair. "Besides, who else is going to eat my burnt pancakes?" Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Finn lived in the Rhodes mansion, attended therapy sessions, and slowly began to heal. But every morning, Dante drove him to Carter's stand for breakfast. Every morning, Audrey and Finn would sit together eating pancakes and being kids. But the media got wind of the story. Tabloid headlines screamed about the homeless child CEO son angle, and soon photos of Carter, his van, and his roadside stand were circulating. Most people saw a heartwarming story. Some saw an opportunity for judgment. "Sidewalk cook kept billionaire's son hidden for months," one headline read. The article implied Carter had known who Finn was and kept quiet for ulterior motives. It was absurd, easily disproven, but facts rarely mattered once the story was out. Carter found himself recognized on the street sometimes with gratitude, sometimes with suspicion. His business suffered. The van's brake problem got worse. The stress lines around his eyes deepened and Audrey became quieter, more withdrawn. Alexandra called him to her office. The building was all glass and chrome, the kind of place where his worn jeans felt like a costume from the wrong play. He sat across from her at a conference table that probably cost more than his van. "Mr. Ellis, I want to thank you again." Alexandra's voice was professional but warm. "I know the media attention has been difficult. I want to make it right." She pushed a folder across the table. Inside were legal documents, contracts, liability waivers. "My lawyers have prepared this. It confirms you had no knowledge of Finn's identity, that you acted purely out of kindness. In exchange, I'm prepared to offer you a settlement, enough to buy a new vehicle, rent a proper apartment, maybe put some aside for your daughter's education." Carter stared at the papers, neat rows of text that reduced 6 months of small kindnesses to a transaction. He thought about Audrey sleeping in the van, about the brake lines that needed replacing. And then he thought about Finn's face, about trust and how easily it shattered. "I don't want your money, Ms. Rhodes," he said quietly. "I didn't help your son because I was expecting payment. I helped him because he was hungry and alone, and no kid should have to be either of those things." Alexandra's expression flickered with surprise or maybe respect. "Mr. Ellis, I'm not trying to pay you off. I'm trying to help you the way you helped Finn. What I've earned," Carter said, standing up, "is the right to walk away from this with my integrity intact. If I take that money, even if it's meant kindly, I'll always wonder if I'm the kind of person the tabloids say I am." He headed for the door, then paused. "But there is something you can do. Make sure Finn stays safe. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe. Don't let him become a pawn again. He deserves better than that." Alexandra nodded slowly, tears threatening in her eyes again. "You're right. And I promise I'm trying to be better. For him." Carter left the glass tower and returned to his van, to his daughter, to the life that was hard but honest. He did not know that Clinton Rhodes, facing criminal charges and the loss of everything he valued, was planning one final desperate move. The Rhodes Technologies corporate event was meant to be a triumph. Alexandra had announced the creation of the Rhodes Foundation for Homeless Youth, a multi-million-dollar initiative inspired by her son's experience. Carter had been reluctantly invited a minor figure in the story present, mostly because Finn had insisted. "If Carter and Audrey aren't there, I don't want to go," the boy had said firmly. So Carter found himself in a borrowed shirt that did not quite fit, standing in the underground parking garage of Rhodes Tower, while Audrey clutched his hand and gawked at expensive cars. Finn, dressed in a suit that made him look older, stayed close to Carter's other side. The elevator ride up was supposed to be quick, just a transfer to the main event space. But Clinton Rhodes had been watching, waiting, planning. He had hired security people who could move through the corporate world without raising flags, and he had timed everything for this moment of chaos and transition. It happened fast. One moment they were a group moving toward the elevator. The next there was a crash, a service cart overturning, creating confusion and blocking sight lines. In that moment of distraction, Clinton emerged from behind a concrete pillar, grabbing Finn by the arm and pulling him toward the service exit. Finn cried out a sound of pure terror. Alexandra spun around, her scream echoing through the concrete space. Dante's team moved to intercept, but Clinton had people blocking their approach, creating seconds of crucial delay. Carter did not think. He just moved. He was not a fighter, was not trained in security or heroics. But he was a father, and some instincts run deeper than training. He ran, full out, and threw himself at Clinton's legs in a tackle that was more desperation than technique. They went down hard, Carter's shoulder screaming in pain as they hit concrete. Clinton kicked out, catching Carter in the ribs, but Carter held on, wrapping his arms around the man's ankle like a drowning person grabbing a life preserver. Clinton was stronger, better fed, not worn down by years of survival on margins, but Carter had something Clinton did not. He had months of watching Finn smile over pancakes, months of seeing trust slowly bloom in eyes that had learned not to trust. He held on. Finn, freed from Clinton's grip, stumbled backward into Dante's arms. Security converged, finally breaking through the obstacles. Cameras mounted in the parking garage captured everything: the desperate attack, the struggle, and the moment when Carter William Ellis kept a billionaire's ex-husband pinned long enough for police to arrive. The aftermath was a blur of sirens and statements, and paramedics checking Carter's ribs for breaks. Clinton was led away in handcuffs, his face twisted with rage. Alexandra held Finn close, both of them shaking, while Audrey cried into Carter's shirt, overwhelmed by the violence. "You saved him," Alexandra said later in the quiet of a private office. "Again. You saved my son again." Carter shook his head, wincing at the pain. "I just did what any decent person would do." "No." Alexandra's voice was firm. "Most people would have stayed back, let security handle it. You risked yourself for a child who isn't even yours." She sat down across from him, her perfect composure cracked, showing the exhausted mother underneath. "I was wrong before. I tried to reduce what you did to a transaction, but it's not that simple. You gave my son something I couldn't, something money can't buy. You gave him safety without conditions, kindness without ulterior motives." Carter met her eyes and saw genuine emotion there. "Mr. Ellis, I know you don't want money, but please let me help you anyway. Come work in our corporate cafeteria. Bring your street food style to our employees. You'll have a kitchen, a staff healthcare for Audrey. You'll never have to sleep in that van again unless you choose to." Carter started to protest, but Alexandra held up her hand. "This isn't charity, and it's not payment. It's an offer of employment based on your skills and your character. Think about Audrey. Think about what stability could mean for her." He did think about Audrey, about her sleeping in the van, about the future she deserved, but he could not provide. And he thought about Finn, about the strange family they had formed in the shadow of an overpass. "One condition," Carter said finally. "Finn gets to come have breakfast with us at least once a week. Not as a publicity thing, just as a kid coming to see people who care about him. Can you agree to that?" Alexandra's smile was the first genuine one Carter had seen from her. "That's the easiest contract I've ever signed." 6 months later, the corner of the Rhodes Technologies cafeteria that housed Carter's Corner had become one of the most popular spots in the building. Carter stood behind a proper griddle in a real kitchen with actual health inspections, flipping pancakes with the same care he had shown on the street. But now he had help, a small staff of people who needed second chances, people who understood what it meant to feed not just bodies but dignity. Audrey attended a good school now, the kind with art programs and teachers who had time to notice when a student was struggling. She still drew constantly, but now her pictures included 3 figures: a father, a sister friend, and a brother friend, always together, always safe. And Finn came every Sunday morning, driven by Dante, or sometimes by Alexandra herself. He would sit at the counter, Audrey beside him, and they would argue cheerfully about whether chocolate chip or blueberry pancakes were superior. His nightmares were less frequent now. The therapy was helping. Slowly, carefully, he was becoming a child again, rather than a survivor. Alexandra had changed too. She was still the CEO, still drove the company forward, but now she left work at reasonable hours. She joined Finn for breakfast more often than not, sitting at the counter in designer clothes, sometimes splattered with syrup, laughing at her children's jokes and learning that success had different definitions. The old van had been cleaned up and restored. It sat in a place of honor outside Rhodes Tower, a piece of public art, a reminder of humble origins and the importance of kindness. A plaque beside it read, "No child leaves hungry," the unofficial motto of Carter's Corner. On that particular Sunday morning, with winter sun streaming through the cafeteria windows and the smell of fresh coffee mixing with maple syrup, Carter looked around at his small kingdom and felt something he had not felt since before Larissa died. Not happiness exactly, but contentment. Purpose. The sense that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Finn looked up from his pancakes, syrup on his chin, and grinned. "These are perfect, Carter, just like that first morning." "That's because I make them the same way I always did." Carter replied, ruffling the boy's hair. "The only difference is the kitchen around me." "And us," Audrey added. "We're different too. We're better." She was right. They were better. Not because poverty had been replaced with security, though that helped. Not because trauma had been erased, because it had not. But because somewhere in the darkness, under a bridge between a man giving pancakes and a boy accepting them, between a mother's desperate search and a child's fragile trust, something important had been built. A family. Not bound by blood or law or obligation, but by choice, by showing up, by making extra pancakes even when resources were tight, by believing that people mattered more than profit and that kindness, even small kindness, could change the world. Alexandra raised her coffee cup in a quiet toast. To second chances. Carter clinked his cup against hers, then against the kids' juice glasses, and smiled. Outside the windows, the city stretched out in all directions, full of people struggling and striving and surviving. Somewhere out there, another kid was hungry. Somewhere, another parent was doing their best with too little. And somewhere, someone was making the choice to care, to help, to show up. The work was never done. But this morning, in this kitchen with these people, it was enough.